He came home from work with 5 men I'd never met before. No warning, no explanation. They walked in behind him like they belonged there, smiling, politely nodding, as they slipped off their shoes, coats already half unbuttoned. I stood in the kitchen, still holding a half-chopped onion. "Dinner's not ready yet," I said. "That's okay," he replied, setting his keys down. "They're not here for dinner." The 5 men sat around the table casually like they'd done it 100 times before. They didn't talk much, just small comments, work, traffic, something on the news, but I felt it the way their eyes kept finding me, not in a rude way, not even bold, just watchful. He opened a bottle of wine, poured a glass, and brought it to me. My husband James kissed my shoulder, then quietly stepped aside. He'd had his moment, now he was letting me experience what would unfold next. The room stayed quiet, but I felt the shift near me. They were ready. He leaned in once more, his voice low and steady. "Enjoy. Before we start, please take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It's fast, easy, and your simple support goes a long way in helping this channel grow. It truly makes a difference. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin." He held nothing back, his body pressed close, deep into the rhythm, breath catching with every movement. The sheets were twisted beneath us, damp and clinging. My legs tightened around him. I didn't want to let him go. He kissed me, slow, intense, like he was pouring himself into that moment. His hands stayed firm at my waist, gripping like I might vanish if he didn't hold tight enough. It was building, his focus, his effort, the way he gave everything he had, and when it ended he collapsed beside me, chest rising fast, skin flushed and damp. I stared at the ceiling, still catching my breath, but deep down something was still turning, still burning. I turned to him, body aching in all the right ways. Again I whispered. His eyes opened slowly. He smiled, soft and tired. "Give me a second." He tried, he really did. He kissed my shoulder, dragged his fingertips down my spine, rolled over, climbing back into the space between us. Slower this time, his lips pressed into my neck. I welcomed him again, matched his movements, stayed with him, urging him on with my body, but I could feel it, the hesitation in his rhythm, the way his breath started to falter, his strength slipping, muscles fighting to keep pace. Still I held him close, kissed his cheek, his jaw, his mouth. "It's okay," I whispered. He looked at me with both apology and effort in his eyes, but I wasn't disappointed because I loved him and he was trying. He was still with me, still warm, still close, but within me something else remained, not doubt, not emptiness, just hunger, not because he did something wrong, but because I was never done. He brought it up the next morning. I was in the kitchen, nursing my second cup of coffee, still wrapped in his t-shirt from the night before. He walked in, hair a mess, eyes half awake, but there was something focused in his expression, something unfinished. He leaned on the counter, watching me a little too long before speaking. "You ever feel like I'm not enough?" The question landed softer than I expected, not defensive, not insecure, just open, curious. I met his eyes. "Never," he nodded slowly. "But you're still hungry?" "After I can feel it, see it." I didn't answer right away, just held the rim of the mug warm between my hands. "It's not about you," I said eventually. "You give me everything I feel, that I love." That he stepped closer. "But it's still not enough." I looked at him, really looked. There wasn't shame in his voice, just truth, and maybe something else, something deeper he hadn't said out loud yet. I took a breath. "I don't want more because you're lacking. I want more because I just do." He nodded again, thoughtful. "And if there was a way to give you that without losing what we have, would you take it?" I didn't move, didn't answer, but I didn't look away. That was enough. He reached across the counter and took my hand, his fingers curled gently around mine, and even though he didn't say it, I felt it. He was already thinking about how 2 days later he came home from work with 5 men I'd never met before. No warning, no explanation. They walked in behind him like they belonged there, smiling, politely nodding, as they slipped off their shoes, coats already half unbuttoned. I stood in the kitchen, still holding a half-chopped onion. "Dinner's not ready yet," I said. "That's okay," he replied, setting his keys down. "They're not here for dinner." The 5 men sat around the table casually like they'd done it 100 times before. They didn't talk much, just small comments, work, traffic, something on the news, but I felt it the way their eyes kept finding me, not in a rude way, not even bold, just watchful. He opened a bottle of wine, poured a glass, and brought it to me. "You okay?" he asked. I Nodded, but it came out late. He touched my waist, gently held me there for a second, then leaned in and whispered, "They're here for you." I barely had time to react. The words were still hanging in the air, "They're here for you," when my husband stepped in and kissed me. Not a soft kiss, not hesitant, it was full, anchored, like he needed me to feel him before anything else could. The 5 men didn't speak. They sat across the room, spread out along the far wall past the open kitchen. The low light caught their faces, curious, focused, unreadable. Their eyes never left me. My husband's hands moved slowly. One slipped beneath the edge of my shirt. The other settled at my waist. He lifted the fabric over my head with practiced ease. Then, with quiet certainty, he reached behind me and released the clasp with a subtle flick. His lips brushed along my collarbone, his breath warm and steady. I didn't resist. James guided me backward toward the counter. Every movement was deliberate, unrushed, grounded, like he wanted this moment to be seen, even without a word spoken. Then, in one slow motion, he did my layers away piece by piece until the softness of fabric was no longer between us. Cool marble met my skin, sending a ripple through me. He stepped back slightly, just enough to take in the moment, then leaned in again. His hand slid along my thighs. His mouth followed the same path, unhurried, steady. When his lips pressed into me with intent, I exhaled, not sharply, but in a slow, staggered breath that had been waiting. He stayed focused, grounded. The pace of his touch was calm, thoughtful. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't putting on a show. There was something honest in the way he moved, like he was trying to speak through his presence alone. I braced myself, hands finding the edge behind me. My breath caught as a slow warmth gathered layer by layer, each moment pulling me deeper into stillness. I wasn't being held, I was being witnessed. Across the room no one moved, but I could feel their eyes. Their presence hung in the air, impossible to ignore. James remained close, fully immersed, never once breaking rhythm. His steady movements built something quiet but undeniable. And then, without even thinking, my body rose slightly toward him, like gravity had shifted. When he finally pulled back, he rose slowly. His lips brushed my stomach, then my chest, then the hollow just beneath my jaw. He helped me turn, gently guiding me to rest against the countertop. My body followed his lead. My arms settled, my back shifted into an arch, my breath steady but shallow. That's when I saw them, the 5 men, no longer still. They adjusted in their seats, jackets unfastened, posture shifting. There was no rush, no need for words. The energy in the room had changed, focused, intentional, quiet in its weight. James moved behind me, his hands returned to my hips, grounding me. He leaned in, his pace deliberate. I felt the strength in his hold, the way he moved in, close, steady and sure. His breath warmed my neck, and the tension between us came to life. I moved with him, matched his rhythm, let the pressure build slowly between us. I felt his focus, his presence, like he wanted to leave no part of this unspoken. I was his, and he wanted them to see that even now, and I let them. A soft sound escaped him, low, weighted. Then he slowed, his forehead rested against my shoulder, his breathing still deep. His hands slipped from my waist with care, trailing down my sides. He stayed close a moment longer, then stepped back. I stayed where I was, still grounded, buzzing beneath the surface. Across from me the 5 men stood, one by one, no chaos, no urgency, just motion with purpose. Jackets eased off shoulders, sleeves rolled back, hands adjusted buttons. James leaned in once more, his lips brushed the shell of my ear, his voice barely audible. "Enjoy." The first one stepped forward without a word, his hand settled at my waist, and I didn't resist. He moved in, close, confident, steady. My body reacted before my mind caught up. I drew in a breath, rising to meet him, overwhelmed by the closeness and the intensity of his pace. He moved with control, measured, deliberate. My hands pressed to the counter, arms trembling as I tried to stay grounded. Every shift in motion sent a ripple through me, tightening something deep inside, and then it overtook me, sudden, breathless. My body tensed, then softened as a sound escaped me without warning. I didn't collapse, I opened, and just like that he stepped back, his presence lingering as the sensation passed. Before I could fully recover, another approached, taller, broader. He adjusted me gently, hands firm but careful, then leaned in. I gripped the edge. Again my knees faltered under the pressure. His pace was different, slower, deeper, more deliberate. Every motion carried weight, drawing tension through me in waves. My breath hitched. I was Completely still, held in place by his steady presence, the second wave came sharper. My thighs shook, my hands tightened. I reached for something I couldn't name, and then I let go, breathless and undone. But it didn't end there. The third moved in. One hand reached up, curling gently into my hair, tilting me just enough so he could meet my eyes. He didn't wait. His movements were firm, assured. My breath caught in short bursts, my body jolted with each rise of pressure. But I didn't pull away, I leaned into it. Fully, not because I had to, but because I needed to. It overtook me again, louder, more intense. A sound tore from my chest as the pressure unraveled everything. He studied me as I shook in his hold, keeping me grounded. While the moment passed, they weren't done. The fourth stepped in, and this time another stood in front of me. We didn't speak that night, there was no need. My body still trembled slightly as I stepped into the bathroom, the mirror fogged with steam. Unable to blur the way I looked at myself, I saw something different, not guilt, not regret, just a shift, quiet, subtle, but as clear as the moonlight slipping through the window. James lay on the bed, sheets draped over his hips, eyes still on me as I stepped out. No questions, no explanations, just a hand extended, waiting for mine. I walked to him and placed my hand in his, and in that silence, I felt something deeper than comfort. I felt love, not because he shared me, but because he chose to believe in us, in something beyond possession. We lay there, wordless, our breath sinking slowly. The wave had passed, but the tide remained. The next morning, everything in the house was calm, unchanged. The table had been cleared, wine glasses emptied, chairs pushed back into place. No evidence, as if the night before had been a dream, but I knew it was real. Every trace lingered on my skin, in the silence of the room, in the way I had been touched with intention, with reverence. James placed his hand gently on my back as I stood pouring coffee, a light touch, unspoken, but filled with presence. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low near my ear. I nodded. "I'm not just okay, I'm opening." He looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time, not as a husband,